I was still in my slippers when the rookie rolled up. Blue lights flashing in the middle of our quiet cul-de-sac, right in front of my damn driveway. My coffee was still hot, and my Rolls-Royce Ghost, charcoal gray, polished like a mirror, was parked neatly by the curb. I hadn't even shut the door yet. The kid steps out of the cruiser, one hand on his belt, the other adjusting his sunglasses like he's in an action movie. "Sir," he says, already flipping open a notepad, "this vehicle has been reported by the Homeowner Association as a potential code violation." From the corner of my eye, I catch her, Karen, leopard print robe, hair sprayed into a helmet, standing at her bay window with her iPhone pointed right at us. I could practically hear her breathing heavy with excitement. I took a sip of my coffee. "What code?" I ask. He squints at his paper. "Unregistered vehicle on HOA property, possible noise disturbance, non-resident access." I let out a breath and set the mug on the hood. "Kid, do I look like I'm not a resident?" His eyes dart to my slippers. "I gotta ask for ID, sir." And just like that, I was a suspect, in front of my own damn house. Now, if you're watching Karenology, you already know these things. They never start with just a misunderstanding. They start with someone like Karen deciding the rules are hers to write. And if you don't fit the picture she painted in her head, you're guilty by default. Funny thing is, I could have ended it right there. The badge was in my glove box. Just reach in, flash it, and boom, end of scene. But something about his tone, about her smirk behind that glass, made me pause. So I handed over my license. Just a license, no badge. The kid takes it, walks back to his cruiser. You ever been judged by someone who didn't know a damn thing about you? Felt that burn under your skin? That was me, standing there, breathing slow, counting heartbeats. When he returned, he looked unsure. "Everything checks out. You live here." "No kidding," I said. "Is it illegal to own a car that's nicer than hers?" He didn't laugh. "Just doing my job." Karen was now on her porch, arms crossed, a smug little smile playing on her lips. "Don't worry, officer. We take security seriously around here." I turned to her. "Security or personal vendettas?" She didn't flinch. "You're not listed on the HOA directory. That car is not compliant with aesthetic regulations." That's when I realized this wasn't about the car. It was about me. Let me back up. I inherited the place from my aunt, who passed last year. I kept a low profile, didn't attend the wine nights or join the bake sale committee. I didn't paint my mailbox to match the seasonal colors. I just moved in, quiet. But you know how that looks to people like her. Mysterious equals dangerous. A week later, the letters started. First it was a warning about the car, then a fine for non-compliance, then talk about towing. I thought it'd blow over. It didn't. At the next HOA meeting, my first, she made sure I sat front and center. "Mr. Garrison," she said, using my last name like it was a curse word, "your presence here is finally acknowledged." They passed around copies of some bylaw amendment, something about vehicular display and community harmony. I raised my hand. "Is this retroactive?" "No," she said sweetly. "It's immediate." Of course it was. The vote passed, 6-1. Guess who the one was? "You've made quite the impression," a neighbor muttered as I walked out. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't just some guy with a fancy car. And I sure as hell wasn't done. What I did next? That's when things got interesting. The next morning, I found a yellow slip tucked under my windshield wiper. Official looking. Homeowner Association seal at the top. Violation notice, non-compliant vehicle aesthetic. Aesthetic? My Rolls was cleaner than her whole front lawn. I stood there reading it, jaw tight, while her sprinkler heads hissed to life behind me. Karen, in her garden gloves now, waved like we were best pals. I didn't wave back. You ever notice how some people don't pick fights? They just dig little holes under your feet till you fall in. That was her specialty. At the bottom of the notice, in bold red, failure to comply may result in towing at owner's expense. That car had belonged to my brother before me. He bought it after retiring from the Marines. Said it was the first selfish thing he ever did. Died 2 years later. I keep it clean because that car still smells like him. And no garden glove tyrant was going to haul it off without a fight. Let me tell you what happened next. I walked into the HOA office. Carpet smelled like mildew, and the lady at the desk, Janice, maybe, looked up like I was interrupting her spa day. I'd like to see the original regulations, the ones from before Karen's amendments. She blinked. Those aren't public. Then maybe you can tell me how a personal vehicle became a landscaping violation overnight. She shuffled papers, stalling. I don't make the rules. No, but you know who does. She didn't answer, just picked up the phone. A minute later, Karen herself strutted in like she owned the building. Mr. Garrison, she purred, so good to see you taking an interest. I stayed seated. You rewrote the rules. She smiled, with the board's approval. Which board? The one you host wine nights for? That got her lips tight. She leaned in. This neighborhood has standards. Your presence makes people uneasy. Because I don't attend potlucks? She tapped her nails on the desk. Because we don't know you. Well, now you do. I stood up and walked out before my temper did the talking. Outside, I passed a teenager on a bike who shouted, "Nice ride, man!" Funnier still, he lived 2 doors down from Karen. 2 days later, I got a visit from a woman in heels and a designer blazer. Said she was a real estate consultant working with the association on long-term neighborhood improvements. She handed me a glossy brochure, Vision 2030, a community reimagined. Guess what was missing from the map? My house. I asked her straight up, "Why are you here?" She smiled. "There's interest in your property. The HOA believes a park would better serve the community." A park? It's just a proposal. Of course, compensation would be fair. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the arrogance was so thick it practically had a zip code. So you bury me in fines, try to tow my car, then offer to buy me out? She stayed polite. We aim to resolve conflicts amicably. I leaned against the rolls. Tell Karen the answer's no. That night, someone threw eggs at my garage. Shells still stuck to the siding the next morning. And that's when I knew this wasn't just Karen being Karen. This was a campaign. You ever feel a line get crossed so clearly it makes the hair on your arms stand up? That was my moment. And trust me, I was just getting started. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the fence, every rustle of a bush had me checking the window. Not because I was scared, but because I was mad. The kind of mad that builds slow, deep, like a fire smoldering under the floorboards. By morning, I had a plan. See, they thought I was some old fool with a nice car and no backbone. What they didn't know, I'd worn a badge for 30 years. And in that time, I learned something about people like Karen. They don't back off until you push back harder. So I did. I filed a request for all public HOA records tied to my address. Every complaint, every amendment, every vote. I didn't use my badge, not yet. I went in as a citizen, quiet, thorough. Janice looked like she'd swallowed a lemon when I asked. That's a lot of paperwork. I smiled. Got time. She handed me a manila folder 3 inches thick. Inside, a gold mine. Turns out, Karen had been maneuvering for months, rewriting parking rules, aesthetics clauses, even pushing for rezoning proposals that conveniently excluded certain lots. Mine was always listed as non-conforming. And guess what? Those votes, all pushed through in special meetings with just enough board members present to make it legal. I started connecting dots. My neighbor 2 houses over, nice woman, retired librarian, moved out last spring, fast. No goodbye, no explanation. Found a notice in the records, multiple fines for overgrown hedges, inconsistent paint tone, and lawn neglect. Her house sold at a loss, to a company linked to Karen's brother-in-law. Have you ever seen a pattern so clear it makes your stomach turn? That's what I had in my hands. I made copies, lots of them, and then, right when I was feeling the wind shift, it happened. A tow truck. Middle of the afternoon, bright sun, no warning, just a flatbed creeping down the street like a vulture. I was trimming the hedges when I saw it. My heart didn't just drop, it slammed into the dirt. The driver hopped out, got an order for a Rolls-Royce, non-compliant vehicle. Karen was across the street, watering her petunias like this was just another Tuesday. I walked over, calm. You got paperwork? He handed me a sheet. It was signed by the HOA president, effective immediately. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just stepped between him and the car and said, You touch that hood, you better be ready to call the sheriff next. He paused, looked nervous. Just doing my job. Then do it with a warrant. He called his dispatch, spoke in low tones, nodded a lot. Karen walked over. This is illegal removal, Mr. Garrison. You're obstructing. I turned to her. And you're walking a legal line so thin, you can't even see it anymore. That's when I saw it. Hesitation, just a flicker, but it was there. The tow truck backed out. I stood in the driveway, hands on hips, watching it roll away. And that's when my phone buzzed. Blocked number, I answered. A man's voice, raspy, low. You don't know me, but I used to live where you live now. I stepped into the shade. Go on. She did the same thing to me, different excuses, same tactics. I fought and I lost, but I kept records. You want them? My pulse kicked up. Who are you? He paused. Just someone who wants to see her finally lose. I swallowed hard. You ever feel the pieces falling into place all at once? That was my moment. And trust me, this thing was just heating up. He left a manila envelope inside my mailbox. No name, no note, just records. And when I say records, I mean dirt. Emails, HOA internal memos, complaint forms with forged dates, even photos, grainy, time-stamped, of Karen standing with contractors on properties that weren't legally for sale yet. Same realtor every time, same company buying. You connect the dots, the picture ain't pretty. You ever open a box and realize it's not just dirty, it's radioactive? That's what I was holding. I sat at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning, highlighter in one hand, bourbon in the other. Every page just made the heat behind my eyes burn hotter. Turns out, my house wasn't just an eyesore to her plan. It was the last piece. She'd built her little HOA empire by bullying, isolating, and flipping out the folks who didn't fit her picture. And I was the last one standing. So, what did I do? I went quiet. Didn't show up to the next meeting, let them think I was rattled. Meanwhile, I was digging. Found out that same real estate firm had its business license suspended in another county. Fraud, misrepresentation, you name it. I put together a folder, tight, clean, with a letter addressed to the state licensing board, copied the city council, zoning committee, even the county assessor. But I wasn't done. I needed one more move, something unexpected, something loud. That's when I called a friend, used to be an investigative reporter, retired but still sharp, told her the story. She didn't say a word for a full minute. Then she said, I'll bring the camera. We planned it like a stakeout. Day of the HOA's community beautification walkthrough. Karen's little parade with board members where they nitpick yards and write citations. I was waiting. Front lawn trimmed, hedges neat, American flag freshly hung, and my Rolls parked perfectly on the line between my property and the so-called community space. She came marching down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, board members trailing behind her like ducks. Stopped cold when she saw me. Mr. Garrison, you are in direct violation of the new code. I smiled. Which one? The one passed without a full vote? Or the one written by a company under fraud investigation? One of the board members looked confused. Another shifted uncomfortably. That's when the reporter stepped out from behind my porch column, camera rolling. Karen froze. Care to comment? The reporter asked. Karen turned red. Who are you? Us are freelance media. We're investigating questionable practices within residential associations. Karen snapped. This is private property. Actually, I said, this here? Community space, according to you. She didn't respond, just stormed off, clipboard shaking. And right when I thought she'd retreat, she made her move. Later that evening, a certified letter showed up at my door. It's cease and desist, it said, claiming defamation, disruption, and threatening removal from the community. That's when I knew she was scared. Not angry, not smug. Scared. But this was only halftime. Because what I had planned next was going to burn her whole house of cards down. I waited 3 days. 3 days of silence, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't called out a corrupt empire on her front lawn. But silence from people like Karen, that's just the eye of the storm. And sure enough, it hit. On a Thursday morning, I got served. An official-looking man in a tucked-in polo handed me a letter and mumbled something about temporary injunction. Karen had filed an emergency complaint, accused me of harassment, threats, creating an unsafe environment. Unsafe? I mow my lawn at the same time every Saturday. The paper said I wasn't allowed to attend HOA meetings. I wasn't allowed to film, document, or communicate with any board members outside of written channels. They were trying to box me in. But here's the thing about pushing a man into a corner. If he knows what he's doing, you just gave him leverage. Let me show you how that works. I stopped playing defense. Pulled every permit related to community upgrades over the last 3 years. Compared signatures. Found 2 with the same name signed different ways. Sloppy forgery. One of the companies tied to the HOA's beautification project was registered in Nevada. Address led to a P.O. box. Now we're talking. I sent copies to the state attorney general's office. But I wasn't done. I paid a visit to a friend who still worked at the county inspector's office, brought him coffee, talked shop, slid over some documents. He leaned back in his chair and let out a whistle. "This your HOA?" "Yep." "Damn, you realize some of these improvements they approved? That retaining wall by the creek? It never passed code." I nodded. "Think you could take a look, as a neighbor, of course." He smiled. "For you, I'll schedule it tomorrow." Now, here's where it gets better. The next morning, Karen's army of landscapers was out early. I watched from my porch with coffee in hand. That's when the county truck pulled in. My friend in his official vest stepped out, clipboard ready. Karen walked out like always, lipstick perfect, little heels on the grass, and stopped cold. He pointed at the retaining wall, then at her, then at the clipboard. Within 10 minutes, the landscapers were packing up. 2 hours later, the wall was declared non-compliant and subject to fines. You ever see someone lose power in real time? It's quiet, just a shift in the air, like the room doesn't listen to them anymore. That was Karen. But the biggest crack? It came that night. A knock at my door, not the police, not a summons. It was Janice, HOA secretary, hair pulled back, eyes tired. She handed me a folder. "I'm not part of this," she said. "I just type what they tell me, but you should see these." Inside, board emails, notes about fast-tracking fines, personal comments about residents they wanted out. My name highlighted, twice. "You didn't get this from me," she whispered, then walked off. I stood there on my porch, folder in hand, moonlight overhead, thinking one thing. They weren't just crooked. They were stupid enough to leave a paper trail. And I was done playing by their rules. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch, folder on my chest, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like it had somewhere better to be. You ever have one of those nights where your mind won't shut off? Like every move you've made is echoing in your skull, louder by the hour? That was me. Because I realized something. This whole time, I'd been trying to expose Karen with facts, with paperwork, with the truth. But people like her don't fear facts. They twist them, bury them, or slap a new coat of paint on them until no one remembers what color the wall used to be. You want someone like that to fall? You don't push. You let them trip on their own heels. I was done playing sheriff. It was time to play magician. The next day, I walked down to the community bulletin board. You know the one, beside the pool entrance where HOA notices live and die. And I posted a flyer. Big bold letters. Special town hall. Concerned neighbors. Meeting. Open discussion. No HOA stamp, no formal invite. Just a time, date, and promise. What you don't know might already be costing you. I signed it, a neighbor who's had enough. By evening, I'd counted 22 neighbors stopping to read it. Some walked past, but some, they lingered, whispered, looked at my house. One gave me a slow nod. 2 nights later, they came. Folding chairs in the cul-de-sac, a cheap speaker. I wore jeans and a ball cap, no podium, no speech, just stories. Did you know 4 homes on our street were bought under LLCs connected to the same broker? Gasps. Did you know the HOA passed 3 amendments in 1 week, all without full quorum? Murmurs. I didn't say Karen's name. I didn't have to. Then I passed out the copies. Not originals, never originals. Just enough to plant doubt. Enough to make them think, Maybe we've been played. Midway through, someone spoke up. Middle-aged guy, used to keep to himself. My backyard got flagged for shade inconsistency. What the hell does that even mean? Laughter, real from the gut. That's when I knew the tide had turned. But tides are tricky. Sometimes they pull back before they hit hard. And Karen, she hit hard. Next morning, I woke up to see my driveway painted. Not graffiti, worse. Squatter, in red. Big block letters across the concrete. You ever feel your stomach drop straight through your spine? I stood there barefoot, jaw locked, watching my past life crash into the present. Because once, a long time ago, during a case gone bad, someone spray painted my squad car. Same color, same word. Back then, it almost cost me my badge. This time, it just lit the fuse. And I was done waiting for the blast. Next day, I didn't clean the paint. I let it sit. Bright red across the driveway, screaming the word she wanted to define me by. I wanted every neighbor who walked their dog or checked their mailbox to see it, not as shame, as proof. Proof that something was broken here. You ever notice how people don't look away from wreckage? They slow down, they stare, and when they stare long enough, they start to see what really caused the crash. By noon, folks started coming by. Some offered to help scrub it off. I said no. Told them I was keeping it as a mural. Karen's contribution to community beautification. That got a few chuckles. One guy brought donuts. Another brought his teenage son and said, "Tell him what's really going on here." So I did. That afternoon, I got a call. Blocked number again. Same raspy voice. Check the HOA bylaws, page 47, paragraph 3. Click. I pulled out the binder and flipped. It was buried. Old clause about emergency removal of board members due to gross misconduct. Needed 2/3 of verified residents to sign a motion. Most folks didn't even know the clause existed. But I did now. And I had a list. I spent the next 48 hours going door to door, not arguing, not pleading, just showing what I had. Emails, votes, fines. The red letters across my driveway. Some people slammed doors. Most didn't. Some said they'd had their own run-ins. Fines for garden gnomes, for excessive seasonal lights, for their kids' basketball hoop. I handed them a pen. And slowly, the list filled. By Friday night, I had 64 signatures. 64 out of 91. 2/3. I made copies, sent them in, certified mail, city office, HOA attorney, Karen herself. You could feel it, like a storm cell rolling in, thick pressure in the air, people walking slower, eyes darting, everyone waiting for the first crack of thunder. It came the next morning. Karen's husband was outside, red-faced, dragging bags to their SUV. She was behind him, shouting about loyalty and betrayal. He slammed the trunk and peeled off without a word. Public theater. She noticed me watching from the porch. Her eyes narrowed like slits. "You think this is over?" she shouted. I didn't answer, just raised my coffee cup and nodded. Because I knew what she didn't. I'd already turned in the motion. And now, she wasn't a queen. Just another resident under review. You ever feel justice coming like the first rumble before a quake? That's what it felt like. And I was ready for the ground to split wide open. I didn't go to the final HOA meeting. Didn't need to. They held it in the community clubhouse. Folding chairs, bad coffee, a microphone that always squealed. I'd been there once, where she humiliated me for driving a car she couldn't afford to dream of. Let her sit in that same chair and feel the eyes. From what I heard, she tried to fight, claimed the signatures were coerced, accused me of manipulating the neighborhood, said I was dangerous. But something had changed. People didn't flinch anymore. They'd seen the driveway, the wall violations, the fines that stacked up like bricks on their backs. They'd watched her husband drive away, and they remembered what it felt like to be scared to ask if they could repaint a mailbox. She lost the vote. 68 in favor. 2 abstained. She was removed as HOA president effective immediately. A neighbor texted me a photo. Karen walking out of the clubhouse alone. No clipboard, no smile, just a woman with a purse over her shoulder and nothing left to say. 2 days later, a for sale sign went up on her lawn. Funny thing is, I didn't cheer. didn't smile. I just poured myself a whiskey, sat on the porch, and watched the sun dip behind her roofline one last time. Because when a storm finally breaks, you don't dance. You breathe. A week after she left, I washed the word off my driveway. Took me a good 20 minutes, scrubbed every letter clean. Neighbors honked as they passed. One dropped off cookies. Another offered to repaint my mailbox, matching or not. And the Rolls? It stayed parked right there by the curb, shining in the afternoon light like nothing had ever touched it. You know what's funny? For all her noise, all her threats, all her rules, she never asked me who I was. Never asked what I did before I moved in. Because if she had, she might have thought twice about starting a war with the police chief. So, if this story hits close to home, if you've ever stared down someone like her and wondered if you had what it takes to push back, let me tell you, you do. And when you finally do, you don't just win. You take back your peace. So, yeah, if you're still here, maybe drop a like. Share it with someone who needs it. And next time someone tells you the rules don't apply to them, just smile and start reading the fine print.